Hi, I'm Wayne Zool, broker associate at REMAX First Realty 2. I've been working as a full-time agent since 2007, and the industry has changed. Recently, real estate has been in the news quite a bit due to a large settlement against the National Association of REALTORS. Specifically, how does this settlement impact consumers here in New Jersey? The New Jersey Association of Realtors has just released several new documents that will impact the amount of paperwork required to buy or sell a property in New Jersey. Beginning on August 1st, all open houses will need to display a sign that potential buyers see prior to entering the home. The sign states the following: "Attention prospective purchasers, please read this sign carefully." This is to advise you that the agent who is conducting this open house represents the seller and is required by law to promote the interests of the seller. Any information you give this agent is not considered confidential under New Jersey law and could be disclosed to the seller of this property. You, as the buyer, are entitled to have someone represent you as a buyer's agent if you are interested in this property. The duties of a buyer's agent include helping you evaluate the property, prepare an offer on the property, and negotiate in your best interests. If you, as the buyer, are already exclusively represented by a buyer's agent, you're required to disclose this representation on the sign-in sheet. If you, as the buyer, are not exclusively represented by a buyer's agent, please be advised that the open house agent is not precluded from being a disclosed dual agent or designated agent and can enter into any relationship with you as explained in the Consumer Information Statement. The Consumer Information Statement, or CIS, has been used in New Jersey for at least as long as I've been in the business. This is a statement, not a contract. It explains to buyers, sellers, landlords, and tenants what agency relationships are. In New Jersey, there are several different types of agents. A seller's agent works only for the seller and is a fiduciary that works in the seller's best interests. A buyer's agent only works for the buyer and is also a fiduciary working in the buyer's best interests. A disclosed dual agent represents both the buyer and the seller. This occurs when a listing agent brings a buyer for their listing or any listing in the same brokerage. In doing so, both the buyer and seller must agree in writing to this. The important thing to note is that the buyer and seller are forfeiting their right to undivided loyalty, as the agent must share all information with both sides. A new type of agency in New Jersey has just been introduced. It's called designated agency. If a buyer or seller does not want a dual disclosed situation, they can opt for designated agency, where another agent from the same firm will represent them as a buyer's or seller's agent with full undivided loyalty. Transaction brokers are another form of agency where the agent doesn't represent the buyer or the seller. Their primary role is to manage the transaction to its completion, but they will not advise or counsel either party at the expense of the other. So while this can seem a bit daunting, the CIS is meant to educate consumers about agency relationships. It is not an exclusive agreement, however. The buyer agency agreement has been revised as well, going from a 2-page form to a 5-page document. Buyer agency agreements have been in New Jersey for around 20 years. Prior to that, all agents actually worked for the seller, not the buyers. But with buyer agency, purchasers can be represented by an agent that is working in the buyer's best interest and has a fiduciary responsibility to the buyer. The buyer agency agreement explains the representation that the buyer will receive as either a buyer's agent, dual disclosed agent, or a designated agent. The compensation to the buyer broker is defined in this agreement and declares that it is payable to the broker at the time of closing on the property. It outlines how compensation from the seller can be utilized. For example, if the seller is offering more compensation than agreed to with the buyer's agent, the difference may be credited to the buyer at closing. The agent's and the buyer's duties to each other are outlined as well. The buyer agency agreement must be completed and signed by the buyer and their agent prior to previewing any homes. Designated agency is now a new type of agency in New Jersey. A typical situation where designated agency will come into play is when an agent in the listing office brings a buyer to the listing, but the buyer doesn't want to forfeit their rights to undivided loyalty. The listing agent or the broker can assign a designated agent to represent the buyer acting in a role that provides the buyer the benefits of a buyer's agent. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Thank you for watching.